everyone, and welcome back to the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, and we're going back to the newspaper strips today to talk about a story called The Paradise Detour. Um, and it's actually one of the strips that is in the book The Life of Luke Skywalker by Ryder Wynnum. I don't want to show it to you every time, but I do think it's kind of interesting just to kind of point out that, hey, this is something that was actually brought over into more of the modern EU, which is kind of cool. But anyways, you can find this in Classic Star Wars Volume 3, this trade paperback here. And a it is what it is. I mean, it is a detour from the thing. So, what is the story of this story here? And actually, fun fact: the story is referencing this cover right here. So, the Alliance has established their base on Hoth, Echo Base, and so again, the newspaper strips are pre-Empire. I guess where we're going through right now. So, but Han, Luke, and 3PO and Chewie are not there. And they actually find that we find that they're on a damaged Millennium Falcon due to the events of the last newspaper strip story, and they have to land on this planet. And Han even kind of makes a comment where he's like, "Man, every time we land on a planet, something bad happens. Why does this keep happening?" So they end up on this planet, and Luke gets separated and actually encounters this woman named Cybele. Um, they fall off this cliff, as you can see here, and then they meet, and she kind of looks a little bit like Mara Jade. Maybe, I mean, initially I thought of Jaina Solo, but especially in this panel here, I don't know. She kind of reminds me of Mara Jade in a way. But anyways, he Luke encounters a lot of different, I guess, illusions here on this planet. He sees a night beast, which we see from the previous um, couple strips, and in fact, he sees that here. And then he also meets a well, apparently it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. We find out later that it's not. Luke doesn't really. I mean, of course, this is Luke sees an Obi-Wan in the Return of Ben Kenobi, that that newspaper strip that we talked about earlier in here, or in these trades. But Luke technically has not doesn't see the real Obi-Wan Kenobi until Empire. That's the first time that he physically sees him again. He hears him, but he doesn't actually see him. So, but basically what we find is that he and the Night Beast were an illusion. Sybil or Cybele is basically this old witch, and she doesn't look that young Mara Jade-ish. That's not her true form. Actually, her true form is kind of this weird. I mean, it's kind of freaky. I kind of thought of there was this old Scooby Doo cartoon where they like go, and I think it was the one with the creepers thing. This old witch hermit that lived in a mountain, and that's kind of who a very obscure reference, I know, but that's kind of who she reminds me of here. Um, this is her talking to Luke, and so basically we learn that she is so the mind witches, basically what they do is they feed on this psychic energy, and that's kind of how they get nourishment. Now Luke is a force sensitive, and he's also, I mean, we don't know this at the time, I guess, in publication order, but he's also the son of the chosen one. So Luke's force potential is very, very high, and his force sensitivity is very, very high. So he is a prime target for Cybele to feed on this. So she doesn't want Luke to leave. So he ends up fighting. Actually, during this, he ends up fighting a Phantom Darth Vader. This is a very version of that here. He's fighting, or he doesn't actually fight the Phantom Vader. And I should also say this too, is that Luke has encountered several Phantom Vaders throughout this time. We see it in the Marvel stuff, for example. So this is not the first time Luke fights a Phantom Vader, but he realizes here that these things can't hurt him. That these phantoms, and basically he realizes that if I give into it, it helps her feed on this force energy. So I don't want to do that, and also this can't hurt me. These illusions can't hurt me, because I think there's at one point where Vader uses his lightsaber and slashes right through Luke, but it does nothing because it's not it's a phantom, it's an illusion. So he ends up escaping. Cybele gets crushed in this temple. So she's presumably killed. He meets back up with Han, and then Han's like, "Let's leave," and then they leave. That's pretty much the story. I will say too that Cybele is very much like Abeloth. I've actually been rereading the Fate of the Jedi series, and I'm actually on Ascension right now. And I guess because there's a bookmark up there, boom, there it is. Um, and rereading Fate of the Jedi, and of course going through this in preparation for this episode, I can't help but be reminded of Abeloth in a way, and all that, especially with how that goes. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about Fate of the Jedi sometime here in this show. Don't know what episode that'll be. But anyways, is this an essential read? This story in here? No. This is a detour, hence the title. It's a detour. It's not it's not a I guess I should say it's not a an essential story. It's not imperative that you read this. Um, whether you're a newspaper strip reader or whether you are a modern expanding universe reader. Um, it's kind of the character of Cybele is kind of interesting. Again, just to see the connections to Abeloth. But even so, I don't think she is enough of an interesting character to make this worth your time to go read. If you want to check it out, by all means, go check it out. But for me, this is one that you could probably skip. So, anyways, folks, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time with another episode of the Star Wars Library.